It is the single most loaded Senior Bowl roster I've seen since I started doing this in 2016. We're ranking the offensive positions on today's Renner Ranks.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all the everydayers out there for sticking with me here. I was sick all last week, not on my deathbed, but bad enough that I could not podcast, bad enough that I couldn't go out for the Packers game or even drink a beer at home. That's how rough I was feeling. And if you know me, you know that one hurt me a lot. Do not forget, you can subscribe, like, follow for free on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. I am, of course, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst over at The Messenger, at Mike Renner _ on social media. And today's podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. We're doing the Senior Bowl preview today and tomorrow. Today's offense, tomorrow defense. As I said before, the most loaded Senior Bowl roster because they finally allowed juniors this year, underclassmen. I believe 11 underclassmen are slated to be down there in Mobile, and like all 11 are top 75-ish picks, right? Maybe not all 11. There's actually one guy who probably won't be. Needs a big week. We'll talk about him on tomorrow's podcast when we get to defense. But that's kind of the influx of talent, is that there's all these underclassmen. But, however, this offensive tackle class is not underclassmen and still stacked. It's the best offensive tackle class I've seen at the Senior Bowl, best offensive tackle class I've seen since I started doing this, kind of full-time for my job, 2015 draft with PFF when we started grading college way back when. This tackle class is sick. It's going to break the record, in my opinion, for most offensive tackles drafted in the first round. 7 was the previous record, 2008. I think we get 8. Could get 9. It's crazy. It's crazy. And we'll get to see him next week down in Mobile. Very excited for that. But let's rank top 3 at each position, and then I'll throw in a wild card to watch at each position as well. I'll give you guys a little preview here for next week, which is my favorite week of the year. Senior Bowl week is the best access you get to these guys. I used to get field passes with PFF, won't get that anymore, but you're right there, right in the stands as they're going through one-on-ones right in front of you. You get to really get a feel for who these guys are, what they're all about. And it's a very massive part for a lot of evals, especially for NFL teams as well as myself. So quarterbacks, number one quarterback down there in Mobile. If you guys have watched me talk about these quarterbacks at all, you know it's Bo Nix, the Oregon quarterback. I've waxed poetically about why I think he's QB3 in this draft class. I will add this factoid, though, to it. 142 attempts, 10-plus yards downfield last year. Everyone says check down artist. And that's not a lot, right? There's guys in this class with a lot more than that. That offense did not attack down the football field. But the thing that I keep going back to is he stopped putting the ball in harm's way. His decision-making, even when going down the football field, was as good as it got in college football. PFF has him charted with only 4 turnover-worthy plays on those 142 attempts, the lowest in the entire draft class. That is what I keep going back to with him, is that he's a different guy than everyone remembers. Everyone saw Bo Nix at Auburn. You've seen him in the past. This year, his tape was truly the next step in his development to a level that I think is franchise prospect worthy at the quarterback position. So that's why I have number 1. Very excited to see, though, how he performs in a in an NFL offense, in a non-Oregon offense. If you'll recall, Justin Herbert went down in the Senior Bowl and showed out. Now, obviously, different offense coordinators, different head coaches there in Oregon when Herbert was there, but still similar concerns about, is he a guy who just likes to throw short, or is that the offense? I think we've seen a bit of that was on Herbert, but also a lot of that was on the offense, and obviously his success in the NFL. Evidence enough of that. Number 2, Michael Penix Jr. I think he has a lot to prove. I think he has honestly more to prove than even like Bo Nix for his draft stock down there in Mobile, because you watch his tape, and as much as, CJ Stroud kind of dispelled the myth that every quarterback with elite wide receivers is a product of those elite wide receivers, they put up big numbers, right? That in and of itself is not a valid criticism to use against guys. You watch Penix's tape and the jump balls he throws, you're not going to get away with as many as he did at the NFL level. He takes good chances with it down the football field, but also he takes a lot of suspect chances with it down the football field. I love a lot of aspects to his game, but you saw in the national championship game what it can look like when things go south for him. And that's why, I had a lot of people saying, Mike, how could you say he was inaccurate? Did you watch the Texas game? The Michigan game was more what we saw in a number of games throughout this season with Michael Penix Jr. So I think he has a lot to prove there and could. I still like him as a talent. I still think he's got a crazy arm, even with that funky release. And I think he avoids sacks, avoids negative plays very well. That's a skill that you want at the quarterback position. And then finally, number 3, Michael Pratt, the Tulane quarterback. I'm another guy I'm very excited for. I'm going to say I'm excited to see all these guys. I love watching football, in case you don't realize. But very excited to see him because if this wasn't a super loaded quarterback class, if there weren't 6 guys ahead of him on most boards right now, he would be kind of that guy getting that buzz where it's like, the NFL likes this guy because 4 years as a starter, completely turned around the Tulane program. That's, the parallels to Brock Purdy and what he did at Iowa State in that, goes to a program and turns them around to something that they've never been at any point in time, haven't been anything close to that since at Iowa State. There's something to that, is those guys who are winners, whether it's the personality, the culture that they can build, and just the brand of football he plays, but also he has tools. He's not a great athlete, but more than athletic enough to evade pressure. Little windup in his throw, but he's got a strong arm. Put 60-plus yards on tape numerous times this past season. That's NFL caliber for sure. So a lot to like for him projecting the NFL. Now, the wild card in this quarterback class is none other than Tennessee's Joe Milton. And I have a really dumb take about Joe Milton, but it has to be said because 6 years of college football, and he's still a massive project as a quarterback. And now he has the strongest arm in college football, may have the strongest arm in the NFL when he gets there. It's an absolute cannon. But this dude can run, like run. And he's 6'4", 242. I would draft this guy to play tight end before I draft this guy to play quarterback. He's that good of an athlete. And so, he's maybe like a top 5 tight end in this class, if that's where you want to consider him, just because the guy can really, he's got the tools to do it. It's not an unprecedented transition, right? It's happened a lot over the years, quarterback to tight end. I think he could be the next in line. At running back position, the weakest group down there. So we don't have to take too long on it. But the number 1 running back I have on my board down at the Senior Bowl, Kamani Vidal, the Troy back, 5'8", 218, compact as can be. And compact, low center of gravity. Dude's tough to bring down, and he has a little juice. Like he's got his burst through the hole is very intriguing to me. To me, if you're comparing him and Blake Corum to similarly sized backs, right? Two like very low center of gravity dudes, so that's how they kind of win. Corum's better between the tackles, more of a grinder. He's going to get the tough yardage. Kamani Vidal's got a little more home run speed, a little more open field wiggle. I think he's top 5 back in this class. Very excited to see how he does. I gotta stop saying very excited, but he's very excited to see how this guy does down in Mobile. I want to see more from him as pass catcher too. Next up on the running back list, Tennessee's Jalen Wright, the most actually explosive back in this draft class. 5'11", 210, 7.4 yards per attempt this past season. Came out early. He's a true junior there. I believe he probably ends up a top 100 pick just because there's so few backs in this class worth drafting there. Now, maybe the NFL wises up and says, then we just won't draft him, in the top 100. That could be the case. But the need, as you'll see, is always needs supersede talent more often than you'd like in the NFL draft, I will say. But this guy I'm excited because the offense he played at Tennessee, if you've watched Tennessee at all, you know what I'm talking about, is comical in the run concepts he was doing there compared to what he'll have to do in the NFL. Everything's a light box. 2 or 3 different rushing concepts that he's running. And the thing is, he didn't even like carry the full load there. Only 136 rushing attempts this past season. That was the most of any season in his career. No, actually, I think he had 146 the year prior. So not a lot of attempts over the course of his career. And the vision was suspect, running style, a little suspect, was a home run-ish merchant, which I don't blame him. Again, is that the offense? Is that what they asked him to do, is try to hit big plays? Because that's their passing game, right? That's what they thrive on. So hard to say, but we'll find out next week. Number 3 on this list, Imani Bailey, TCU running back, a guy who's a true senior, 4th-year guy, spent 2 years at Louisiana Lafayette before transferring to TCU, backed up Kendre Miller, 3rd rounder from a year ago. No shame in doing that. Breakout year this year, over 1,200 yards, I believe. I love the ferocity with which he runs. At 5'9", 207, he's not the biggest, but he runs hard, man, and can break tackles. Has probably a solid athlete for the position. Wouldn't call him below average. Wouldn't call him that he stands out for his athleticism either. But probably not going to be a top 100 pick or anything. Definitely not as good a prospect as Kendre Miller was coming out. But that's just kind of how slim the pickings are in this running back class. Wild card in this running back class, Dylan Laube, New Hampshire. 295 receiving yards against Central Michigan earlier this year. I texted my buddy who went to Central Michigan after that game. I said, what happened? He said, we stink, which was true. Central Michigan did stink this year, unfortunately. But Laube was also pretty darn good, man. This guy has some unique receiving traits. Now, at 5'11" or 5'10", 207 pounds, I've seen on Twitter comps to Christian McCaffrey. Surely that couldn't be because they're both white. Surely it has to be skill set related, right? Now, I don't see that, I'll just say. But the guy has pass catching skills. I more want to see then how he fares as a pass protector. I mean, I want to see how he fares as a receiver as well. But pass catching skills at running back don't actually matter if you can't pass protect. Scat backs are non-existent, right? Who's the last pure scat back you can remember in the NFL? The scat backs just don't fill a role, right? Even the most dynamic scat back of all time, I'm blanking on his name right now. K-State, Darren Sproles. There we go. I knew I'd find it. Darren Sproles, he still never got a hefty load of snaps, right? Because to play the passing downs as a running back, you have to be able to pass protect just in case that blitz comes. So yes, Dylan Laube, need to see him not only as, again, a pass catcher there, but more importantly, what can he do in pass protection against future NFL linebackers? All right, before we get to this wide receiver class, today's pod. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors, guaranteed fit only to U.S. customers. It's a fun ad read there. Let's get to the wide receiver class. Number 1, Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. There's going to be too many wide receivers to name in here. More than just 3. You guys will see it next week. It's an awesome class, but we had to keep to 3. But number 1 is Ladd McConkey, Georgia wide receiver. He gets it, right? He's got the skill part of wide receiver better than anyone that's going to be at Senior Bowl. Better than a lot of guys outside of, say, Marvin Harrison in this draft class, right? He runs routes precisely. He turns into a heat-seeking missile for the end zone after the catch. The guy gets upfield so well, has such good vision, and just the little things about the position he already does. And he's a good athlete, right? I think he's going to run low 4.4s, I'd say. I'd be surprised if he goes into the 4.5s. I'd be more surprised if he goes in the 4.5s than if he rose in the 4.3s, I'll just say. just based off his tape. And now he was banged up this year. I think that's the biggest thing, easily the biggest thing with him. 6 foot, 195 is the size, and then injury concerns at that size. Can he bang with the big dogs at the NFL level? That was maybe sounding a little sus there for a second, but I think I pulled it out. I just think he's going to go down there and just carve up the group of corners. If he doesn't, we'll reassess. We'll have another look. But he's just a guy who he'll thrive in that kind of situation. And I just see him as a great kind of complementary piece, complementary number 2. You have, you say your team with a guy who's number 1, like a Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams. And obviously I'm not saying those teams drafted, but you have someone like that. This is a guy who, if he sees single coverage, can win consistently. So would love to pair him as that kind of complementary piece. A guy who could be a legit number 1, though, is the second guy on this list, who I am maybe more excited to see down there in Mobile than any other prospect in this class. High praise, I know. But it's Javon Baker, UCF wide receiver. I've never felt better about a comp. That's not true. I've probably felt better about a comp. It's definitely recency bias for me to say that right now. But I feel very good about this comp. Victor Cruz to Javon Baker. Not only are they like the exact same size. Baker is 6'1", 207 pounds, which was like where that range was what Cruz was listed as his entire career. But they have this wiggle to their lower half. They have this stop-start ability that's unique for dudes 200 plus pounds. And they don't have that elite top end gear, but they got enough to get by you in a pinch. And I'm just a fan of his game. Watched him on tape at UCF. Obviously, he completely outclassed a lot of the corners he was going up against. I think he attacks the ball well in the air, but he does have concentration drops. So he's not the most sure-handed, but it's not a lack of ball skills, I'll say, that is worrying me. So another guy that, even with a good group of corners, he should show out. Number 3, Xavier Leggett, South Carolina. DK Metcalf light, as I refer to him every time I bring him up. But he's 6'3", 227. Already, that's a big-ass wide receiver, right? 1,255 yards this past year, 7 touchdowns. The wild thing about him, and that I just cannot fathom, is he never had more than 167 yards in his career prior to this year. He was insane this year. I mean, just vertical balls, winning at the catch point. After the catch, guys just bouncing off him. It's like, what could have happened over the course of the past 9 months as a 22-year-old man to turn from afterthought in an admittedly average offense to complete stud? I don't know. I'm very curious to see down in Mobile, though, because physically unique dude, just a unique dude. Now, again, why I keep saying DK Metcalf is because not a full route tree guy. He's not the AJ Brown where can sink his hips, change directions easily, run a dig in his sleep. That's just not really him. Turns a little wide turning radius. He's got an SUV turning radius. It's not quite a Mack truck, but it's hard to park. It's hard to park when you're that big. So we'll see how that looks. We'll see how that looks on tape down in Mobile. Wild card in this wide receiver class. Could have gone a lot of different ways with this, but I went with Luke McCaffrey, the only player here that I'll accept any McCaffrey comps for, because he is Christian McCaffrey's brother, Ed McCaffrey's son, and he's a wild card because first 3 years he played quarterback, 2 for Nebraska, 1 for Rice. Said, you know what? I stink at quarterback. I'm switching to wide receiver. I probably should have played there my whole life. My dad was an NFL legend wide receiver. What was I thinking trying to buck this trend? I'm not a Manning. 6'2", 195. This past year, 71 catches, 992 yards, 13 touchdowns. And what I love about him already, ball skills are great. Ball skills are outstanding. I mean, that's why I said he should have played wide receiver already. Just like he was probably catching passes from his dad for ever, since the age of 2. And it shows, watching him catch passes. And then after the catch, he's fantastic. Strong, understands how to run. I mean, the bloodlines. Look at his brother. Look at his brother's vision. That's kind of similarly what he has. And now I know that they're not the same, and he's not going to become that. But the physical talent's there. And then if you have heard anything about the McCaffreys and what Ed the Elder drilled into their kids in terms of like preparation, how they go about it, they are psychotic in their training regimens, their diets, all the things it takes to kind of be a successful, go from, college to pro and making that leap effectively and developing as a football player. Those guys got that down pat. So for him to be 2 years fresh at this position, already leading his team in yards, or to be a go-to guy, very, very encouraging. Very encouraging, I will say. All right, before we get to tight ends and this offensive line class, today's podcast brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Tight ends. We're going to zoom through this. It's a bad tight end class. Some intriguing names here. First off, I list Johnny Wilson, the Florida State wide receiver's tight end. He's actually listed Senior Bowl as wide receiver. But the dude is 6'7", 239. Can someone just like give him a little advice here? Go on whatever diet that offensive tackle coming out of Minnesota did in D3 a few years ago with those crazy shakes. Who am I even thinking of right now? Ben Barch. Go eat some of those shakes. There's been like 5 offensive linemen, I feel like, that have that exact same story. I just ate a butt ton every day. Yeah, we know. That's how that works. It's the same story every time. I don't want to hate on them. I love actually those stories every time I see them. But still, do that diet, Johnny. And the Darren Waller path is a tried and true method to a higher figure contact than you're going to get at that size, trying to play outside wide receiver when these corners can get their hands on you so easily. So I love the movement skills. Banged up this past year, though. Had some drops. But at that size, there's just so much talent to work with. And it's just not a size that's really effective, that really can do the full skill set that you want to do as a wide receiver. Tight end, much more conducive. All right, next up, Tanner McLaughlin, Arizona. To me, he's the most fluid, like actual tight end that's going to be there. I believe he started at wide receiver, kept growing. Johnny, take notes here. Maybe ask him a few questions. Into a tight end, transfer from Southern Utah to Arizona, 45 catches, 530 yards this past season. He's not a super high-end athlete, unfortunately, at that size. I still think he runs maybe 4.7s. But he has that, which is fluidity, which is body control, which is route running ability. So if you're looking for a guy who 3 years down the line in a weak tight end class could be starting, could be putting up 700, 800 yards, Tanner McLaughlin's probably one of the guys I would put a pin in and say could be him. Next up, Ben Sinnott, Kansas State tight end / fullback, because he was the PMT Loman Award winner this year. But he's really more of a tight end. 6'4", 245. His strengths are blocking and yak ability. He's, all the natural receiver things I just waxed on about Tanner McLaughlin don't quite apply to Sinnott. He's not this polished route runner. It's kind of, you're scheming him open more than you're asking him to win single coverage. But man, like, he is tough as he reminds me of George Kittle after the catch and just how he runs. George Kittle, obviously a superior athlete, but Sinnott, the whole, Kittle will go right through you as opposed to even attempting to make you miss. That's what Sinnott does after the catch. So fan of his game. Think he's all these guys, though. They're all probably day 3 picks at this point. The wild card is Jaheim Bell, the former South Carolina tight end who last season was at Florida State, who's 6'3", 239 pounds, and kind of looks like a running back. And truthfully, his usage is kind of like that of a running back. He's broken double-digit tackles 3 straight seasons. If you would have Gerald Everett in your offense, the former South Alabama, was it, tight end, who originally drafted by the Rams, now with the Chargers, you would put Bell in your offense as well. That's the role he would play. But again, not a guy that's going to be for everyone when you are that size, that small. Offensive tackle class, too many dudes to mention here. We've talked about him a lot too. But number one, Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State, 6'6", 335, power for days, anchor for days. And I had Brandon Thorne on talk about these offensive linemen way back when, the offensive line expert. If you haven't checked that one out, his insight in these guys still holds up very, very well. Obviously, it was like midway through the season. But what he said that I'll echo here was his body posture, is that he can get in his sets at that size and not be hunched. A lot of 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" offensive tackles, they just find it difficult to keep your weight on the balls of your feet, not be out over your toes or back on your heels. And I love his balance because of that. So even if he's not the most fleet of foot, doesn't project to, Tyron Smith, doesn't project to Teron Armstead in pass protection, he could still be a plus pass protector at the next level. Number 2 on this list, Jordan Morgan from Arizona, 6'6", 320. Reminds me a lot of Deion Dawkins coming out of Temple, in that he could be Deion Dawkins. A lot of people project him at guard. Morgan, a lot of people project him at guard. I'm not going to hate if you want to move him there, but I think he's more than good enough to play tackle. He's not kind of things I was saying about Fuaga. He's not a high-end athlete, but he's more enough to be a Pro Bowl caliber pass protector. There are guys that move in a similar manner to the way he does that can play at a Pro Bowl level. Mitchell Schwartz was no better athlete than Jordan Morgan is. Got the length. I think he's got some craftiness to his pass sets already. And this past year, he was playing fresh off the torn ACL at the end of last season, end of November last year. I think now, obviously, every recovery is different from an ACL, but to play as well as he did, to even get better from 2022 to 2023, that gets me jacked up. That gets me excited about what it can be when that knee really is, 100% fully recovered post ACL. So big fan of his game, but again, could be a guard at the next level. Last one, number 3, Patrick Paul. A lot of names to go through here. Could have gone for, I'll just throw them at you here real quick. Not going to go deep into them, but guys who I think will be top 100 picks at tackle. Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. He'll probably be a first-round pick at off tackle. That's there. Roger Rosengarten from Washington, probably a day 2 guy. Javon Foster from Missouri, possible day 2 guy. Dominic Puny from Kansas, maybe a guard as well, but likely day 2 guy. A lot of tackle talent. Patrick Paul, though, gets this 3rd spot because I love the hands in pass protection. The guy was built, the frame, 6'7", 315. I think he's going to have 36-inch arms. And when you have that in your arsenal and you know how to use them well the way he does, and maybe he's not the most technically sound with them, but you can tell he's coordinated with them, which is a good starting point to when he gets to the NFL, gets NFL level coaching consistently. I just think he's probably going to end up back in the first round, a shrewd team like, the Chiefs, someone back there who just needs pass protection help. They're going to get kind of a plug and play guy that I don't think will be a liability out the gate. Last one, wild card here. Kingsley Suamataia, BYU offensive tackle. Freaks list guy, 6'6", 315. I had some serious concerns about his balance on tape, him in the run game, falling on his face. We'll see how that plays out. But distinctly different pass protection versus run game tape. A weird projection for me at the moment. I'm lower on him than most, but the traits are first round caliber. Don't be surprised if he ends up there. I'd zoom through this interior offensive line class. First off, I made this change recently, actually, to this guy being the top of this class, and it's Jackson Powers Johnson, Oregon center. I just can't help but see Creed Humphrey when I watch this guy. He's built like a fire hydrant. He shuffles his feet when he runs. I don't think he gets them more than a couple inches off the ground ever. but my God, the guy can move. And at 6'3", 320, he can move you too. He can move nose tackles. He had about as good so this was his first year starter, true junior, I guess, redshirt sophomore, whatever you want to call it, coming out. Lone season as a starter. I think this is the best tape I've ever seen from an offensive lineman where that's the case, where they only had 1 year as a starter, came out in the draft. I truly think Jax Powers-Johnson, I can't remember a guy quite like that. Just not a lot to dislike on his tape. So after all that, he is my interior offensive lineman 1, but probably more of a center only. Just because that's what he played, and he looks like he'd be awesome at that. So I don't know why you'd want to move him. But if you really desperately need a guard, I'm probably drafting the 2 guys behind him on this list before Jax Powers-Johnson, just because I've seen these guys. They just have more versatility to their game. Which number 2 is Graham Barton, Duke offensive tackle, started his career at center, plays left tackle. He's a heck of an athlete, but 6'5", 314, shorter arms. I think a lot of teams are going to look at him on the interior, where, maybe he gets a chance to pull, gets a chance to run out at center more and be a guy on the move, which is where he really excels. Number 3, Troy Fautanu, the Washington left tackle, another tackle to interior convert. His mirroring ability is just so good. And his hands and pass protection he's just so quick to reset and get his hands to the right spot. I think he's just a high floor pass protecting guard at the next level. I worry about him ever being a plus run blocker. Play strength is average, nothing special, but high floor pass protectors, probably it's still worth a good amount in the NFL, I'll say. Last guy to talk about, the wildcard interior offensive line class, and it's Christian Haynes, the UConn guard. Multi-year starter at guard for UConn. Guy who just got better every single year. Has an awesome guard build where he's 6'2", so on the shorter side. But then I think he has really long arms. We'll see exactly what they measure in at. I would guesstimate somewhere in the 34-inch range, which is that's how you'd put together a guard, man. It's short but long and athletic as heck. And so I could see him with the big weeks. Obviously, his level of competition was not like Barton's or Fautanu's or Jax Powers-Johnson's. But for a big week, I could see that guy cracking that top 3 on the interior line down there in Mobile. All right. Defense tomorrow. Then we'll do actual day-by-day rankings. So we're going to do Shrine Bowl Monday, Shrine Bowl top performers on the weekend, because that's practicing over the weekend. Senior Bowl, I'll be on location doing Tuesday through Friday shows, going over the top performers. So very excited to do that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for the break. My Wisconsin accent coming out there saying sorry. But really sorry for the break. It was just very under the weather. A tough cold and flu season for your boy. Until next time, you will listen to Renner Ranks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.